Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst players we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like this that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I make like 4 players hit home run. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got, 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on this last Saturday in October. It is college football today on SportsGrid. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That's Joe Lisi. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh. And I can already tell this might be a little feisty to start off this second hour because I am Ben Stevens, and this is my top 10 and the additional wait list entering week number 9 of this college football campaign. We start with the wait list just on the outside looking in to the top 10. And there is a notable omission that you will see and we will discuss. But let's first show you the teams that make it into the wait list. Not in any particular order, just the teams barely on the outside waiting to crack that top 10. Drum roll, please. There we go. Indiana, welcome to the wait list and just being on the outside of Ben's top 10. Iowa State remains. Kansas State remains, Texas A&M, and Boise State. As we look at these prices, not only to win a national championship, but the associated numbers to reach the college football playoff, everybody on this list is at least 50 cents or better than a noted omission. And I will admit, that is BYU. The Cougars, of course, remain perfect. They had covered in every game until a Friday ago against Oklahoma State. But let's start with you, because we do things based on projection, not just results, in my top 10 and the wait list. What is that path to a conference championship? How will you stand up for a college football playoff spot? Everybody here, Kev, has a better price than BYU. And despite the Cougars being unbeaten, they're a road underdog today against UCF in Orlando, a Knights team that has lost 4 straight.
I think for me with BYU is talking to you and you as well last season. It is about the results, trying to throw Florida State into a playoff. Thank goodness they didn't do that. BYU has done everything you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I understand about projections. The one loss that K-State has is to BYU.
Correct.
I think for the Cougars to be unbeaten and not make the cut here, it's tough. I understand. Like, Boise's path to making the playoff is because they're supposed to get this automatic bid. Well, it's a similar story for BYU, K-State, and Iowa State. I also think probably the real beef here that I'm going to have is there's a team that isn't here, but inside the top 10, that I actually now think we've all started to maybe be a little too kind to, where I think we can start to maybe poke some holes and ask some real questions.
Well, it's possible. I'll take the Iowa State, BYU, and K-State argument.
Please.
So Iowa State struggled with UCF last week as a 13.5-point favorite. They win in the fourth quarter 38-35. If BYU, in fact, I guess, blows out UCF on their home field, will you then put them in to the top 15. I mean, that's the one thing for me is that, Iowa State struggled, and we know BYU struggled with Oak State, which is at least a gutty team.
And listen, head-to-head should matter. And K-State lost to BYU in a large way as a road favorite in Provo. I am very cognizant of all of that. BYU would beat number 16 or 17 just on the outside. Here is why I'm keeping Cougars out for just a moment. Almost like last year's Washington, perhaps, but the Huskies a brighter outlook for most of the year, or 2022 TCU. The odds makers do not love BYU, and yet they have proven the odds makers wrong time and again throughout this season. If the odds makers are incorrect and BYU wins outright as a short underdog in Orlando today, welcome to the wait list, maybe the top 10.
I'll just say this, because I snapshot these teams in your mind. Again, there's a team in the top 10 that I don't know. I don't really know. We'll get to it. There's a team in the top 10 I got problems with.
I'm excited. I wonder who it is. Yeah. I think I might know. So let's show that top 10. We work in reverse order from the bottom, working our way up. LSU now checks in at number 10 after an impressive road win last week in Fayetteville. Clemson remains at number 9. Tennessee, number 8. Notre Dame, number 7. And Miami, number 6. Here's my guess. Let me know what you say. Kev, your issues with 8th-ranked Tennessee?
Not at all.
Oh!
Is it Notre Dame?
No.
Okay, so Clemson.
I don't understand the Clemson thing really at all.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. And now you were a Clemson guy.
Now I'm twisted.
Confused
no, I was not a Clemson guy. I mean, Lisi's a Clemson guy and then tried to pretend he wasn't a Clemson guy, and then we kind of addressed that. No problem. No, it's okay if I may. Clemson this year played one ranked team. They lost the game by 31 points.
True.
Okay. Outside of that, they've not played a team with a pulse. I mean, what is their best?
But you can only play who you play.
Understood that. BYU's unbeaten. They're behind them. Indiana is unbeaten. They're behind them. Texas A&M did lose at home to Notre Dame. They smashed Missouri. They're playing in the SEC. Iowa State's unbeaten. K-State has big wins and just one loss. Yeah. Clemson is in front of LSU, Joe. Okay. I mean, come on. Start walking this way. There's no way they should be in front of that Tiger.
Wait a
these
second.
two losses, LSU's loss is a whole lot worse than this loss.
Strongly disagree.
Well, all right.
Strongly disagree.
LSU's loss to USC
100%
is better than Clemson's loss to the team you think is the best in the country.
When they scored 3 points. Wait. Was it just win-loss? You can try and recreate it, but you can't do it. I promise.
I got a belt on. I got a belt on.
The knees also multiple surgeries on that bad boy.
They lost by 31 points to Georgia.
The best team in the country.
Non-competitive. USC, I understand they're sat there at 3 and 4. What?
Well, USC, Lincoln Riley's Clay Helton 2.0.
USC lost 4 consecutive games.
I understand that. They had a fourth-quarter lead in all of those football
what
games.
What does that matter?
But again, they lost the game by 7. It was a back-and-forth affair.
Wait a second.
If LSU won that game, they'd be sitting in this column.
I'll tell you what. I am concerned about LSU because they've played a lot of close games, and I'm an LSU backer.
You really surprised me sometimes.
They went toe-to-toe.
They have a win over Ole Miss. What did they do? Okay, so fine. So they lost.
Hang on.
What have they done?
They smashed every team.
They've won 6 straight, 16 points in all.
Garbage.
Okay, NC State.
Garbage.
But they
keep
covered.
going. No, keep going.
But they covered.
Keep going. They're playing garbage teams.
But that's who they
LSU played Arkansas. Covered, smashed them. They played Ole Miss, a real team.
Why is Notre Dame so high then? They've struggled. They lost to Northern Illinois outright.
I would have LSU in front of Notre Dame as well. I think LSU's way too low.
Look,
LSU would be my second-ranked SEC
LSU struggled
team.
against South Carolina. LSU struggled.
That South Carolina team is better than people thought.
They're better than they thought, but they could have lost that game.
100%. So they come back from 17 down.
But it was still a win. It just wasn't a cover. I think we're getting a little bit confused here in terms of stacking up wins, which is what your argument was for BYU, and covering most of those numbers, stacking up wins and covering most of those numbers by a substantial margin.
BYU has a win over Kansas State on the wait list.
Yeah, but we're making Kansas State out to be like, Georgia.
No, we're not. No,
I'm
close.
I'm not.
I'm making Kansas State out to be a team that is ranked within his top 15. That's what I'm making them out to be.
But again, from just,
So where would Clemson be in your top 10, top 15? Would they be on your wait list?
They would probably be on my wait list. I didn't go that far. They would not be inside my top 10, though.
Interesting.
They really wouldn't.
One of the 10 best prices to win the national championship and reach the college football.
But the way they're
understand
playing, they're playing as well as anybody in the country right now.
I see. I can't get there with who they're playing up against.
I agree that again that they're not playing top 10 competition.
They're not playing anything.
But they are smashing. But they are smashing.
I understand that. But
they beat App State, who was the group of 5 favorites.
App State is a disaster.
I understand that, but they covered that line. That line was 18 and a half.
Okay,
66-20.
But the line, if they played again, then like it would be 30.
Home games by an average margin of
they always win at home.
We'll continue this, but let's just make sure we show 5 through 1 as we work our way up. Ohio State stays at 5, Texas at 4. Knew you were not going to like that. Penn State at 3. The only difference I have, Georgia in front of Oregon.
I'm concerned. Look, Georgia's deserving to be there. I have no problem with that. The one concern I do have is Carson Beck starting to become a little turnover prone.
Correct.
Certainly not the same quarterback that we saw, 175-3. If that continues, Georgia's on upset alert along the way.
3 interceptions against both Alabama and Texas.
Way too high, way too high, way too high. Cannot believe they are this high. Way too high.
Okay.
Again,
in front of your national
price.
champion. Come on, man. Come on.
Okay, so what's their best win compared to them?
Iowa.
Oh, Kevin, you're not who you are anymore.
Wait, Iowa. Their win over
You're
Iowa
really
is
confusing me here.
It's a
Back on college football today.
The Iowa.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst player screen I've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball, but the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players hit home run. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Would you be surprised to know that the conversation for Ben's Top 10 to start hour number 2 continued deep into the commercial break? And maybe you heard it there as those mics were hot. As we welcome you back to college football today on this final Saturday in October. Joe Lisi, Kevin Walsh, and Ben Stevens. You can make your final points, but we do really have to preview a monumental Big Ten Saturday.
I don't know. I mean, you want to keep boxing. I'll keep knocking you around. You're talking about Dr. Dangerous. He didn't even play in that game.
But it doesn't matter. When Texas went into the Big House, Michigan had a 23-game home winning streak. They were the defending national champs. They were undefeated. And at the end of the day, Texas put a beat down on them. And that's a quality road win for the Longhorns. You can't take away
covered as a touchdown favorite.
You can't take that away from Texas. Granted, they might not be the same team that you thought they were in the first couple of weeks of the regular season. But at the time that they played Michigan, that was a top 10 win and a gutty road win. I'm sorry. That carries weight over some of the other teams that they played.
Yeah, nothing gutty about it. The quarterback that Michigan played in that game got benched for a guy who got benched.
But it doesn't matter, Kev.
No, that doesn't matter.
So then, you know what?
I don't even know why we do that.
Have no takes until the end of the regular season. See how it plays out.
Your takes,
teams
Joe.
get better from week to week to week.
And teams also get worse,
yes,
Joe.
And teams
that was the second game of the season.
Yes, so if a team is dialed in, are they going to be more dialed in week number 2, or are they going to be more dialed in after they have 3 losses or 4 losses in week number 12?
What are you talking? Michigan's opening game was to Fresno. They looked bad. Michigan over the summer, that game was
Were you getting Michigan's
Pitt.
best effort in Texas? Were you getting Michigan's best effort?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
They were playing probably their worst quarterback in the football game.
So, all right. They won that 31-13. They beat them by double digits. Quinn Ewers put up a dynamic performance, and the defense shut down Michigan completely. But we're going to say it doesn't count.
I think, again, all those rankings, I use projection and the odds a little bit more than the AP pollsters, but they are still the strength of your resume and the outlook moving forward. And wins are wins. We're using a couple of different assessments here to determine everything for Ben's top 10. All right, let's get to today's slate and what we have moving forward. Ohio State off a bye, off its first and only loss of this year. Now 2 Saturdays ago in Eugene against Oregon. How does Ohio State respond? As a 25.5-point favorite in Columbus today, hosting Nebraska. The Huskers were absolutely embarrassed and throttled last week in Bloomington by Indiana, losing 56-7. Joe, it's been a few weeks for the Buckeyes to ruminate over that loss in Eugene. What resolve do we see at Orion Day and his Ohio State team today hosting those Huskers?
Hopefully better than last week. I thought they would respond on the road. They get blown out 56-7, commit 5 turnovers, and that was with the backup quarterback, Taven Jackson, taking over. They couldn't shut down the run, allowed Indiana to rush for 214 yards on that front seven. If you're Matt Rule and you're Nebraska, you need a much better showing on the road. Do you have to win it? No, but you have to make this a 4-quarter game somehow, some way. You look at the series, Ohio State has won 7 straight in the series. Last time they played was a couple of years ago. But again, I'm going to take the points with Nebraska solely by default, expecting that this team rebounds after getting abused last week. Better defensive effort, and Raiola needs to step up with a better performance, no turnovers, but we'll see how it plays out.
I would lean towards Nebraska as well, which I guess isn't saying much. Ohio State doesn't get a lot of love clearly here on this desk. The Buckeyes under Ryan Day, though, off bye, they've been absolute machines. 2019 against Northwestern, 52-3. Skipping the COVID year in 2021, they beat Indiana 54-7. 54-10, they beat Iowa 2022. Last year against Maryland, they win by 20, 37-17. They had to come on late, though, in order to get that game kind of up to that spot. They were a little slow starters in that matchup. It's tough because this number is so big. I want to bet Nebraska, but Matt Rule hasn't covered against a ranked team yet at Nebraska. So this is a spot to me where you're kind of spinning around a little bit trying to find the best angle. I mean, they're chalky, but it should be a winner. Jeremiah Smith, anytime touchdown. He scored in every game. Nebraska's defense gives up a lot more through the air than on the ground touchdown-wise this season. It's a tricky one here, but it's a game that I think lost a lot of juice for what IU did last week against the Cornhuskers.
And it is because of that game in Bloomington. Ohio State had an open weekend last week in week number 8. So it's a 25.5-point spread. Now Ohio State has been favored in all 6 games this year, laid at least 17 in its first 5, 3-2 against the spread. You tipped me off to this, so I did investigate. Nebraska with Matt Rule since the start of last year, now 0-5 ATS against ranked competition. But not just not covering. not covering by an average margin of 21 points per game, reminiscent of this spread today at 25.5. Nebraska had not allowed a rushing touchdown in a single game entering last week against IU, gave up 5. We know Ohio State can get it done on both sides of the football. Here's a very intriguing spot in prime time in Madison at Camp Randall. Wisconsin hosts third-ranked Penn State. This number, less than a touchdown in favor of the Nittany Lions. It is 6.5. Penn State, a bye week after the overtime win against USC. Favored in every game this year, Kev. Just 2-4 ATS. They have not covered in Big Ten play. Wisconsin has won 3 in a row. They have covered in all 3. They have an average victory margin of nearly 34 points per game. How competitive of a football game are we going to see in Madison tonight?
I would lean Penn State, but as somebody right now who has won every bet he's placed in the Penn State game and is desperate to keep that streak alive, I am playing this game under at 47.5. I know Wisconsin has shown some competence on the offensive side of the rock. I think somehow that's outweighing the fact that the defense has looked good. And if one of those two things is going to hold against Penn State, Joe, I think it's the defense more so here. Penn State, a little bit of a look ahead with the Buckeyes on deck as well. I'm going under the 47 and a hook.
It's possible. I like Penn State here, and the reason why, from the series perspective, they've won 6 straight, but I just think they have the better quarterback. When you look at Drew Aller and Braden Locke, even though Locke threw for over 300 a couple weeks ago, if they trail in this matchup, I think that's where Penn State does have the advantage. Put the game on Braden Locke's shoulders and force them to play from behind. I would reluctantly lay the 7 with Penn State.
In this 3-game win streak for the Badgers, bouncing back and resurrecting their season, they are outscoring opponents 117-16. It is an opportunity for Luke Fickell to grab his biggest win in Madison tonight against Penn State. How about those Hoosiers? Next.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst player we've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Indiana is undefeated, a perfect 7-0 for the first time in more than a half century since 1967. Indiana is at home today hosting Washington. The Hoosiers are ranked inside the top 15, number 13 in the land. But, of course, a huge development for this unbeaten IU team. Curtis Rourke, the starting quarterback, is going to miss today's game after suffering a thumb injury that he has already had surgery on last week against Nebraska. Kev, IU has been favored in every game this year. They have covered in 6 of those 7 wins. The only non-cover was week number 1 as a 24.5-point favorite against FIU, winning by 24. With Taven Jackson now the starting quarterback for this Indiana offense today, can the Hoosiers keep it rolling?
So before we kind of get into that, I want to just try and zoom out for a minute about what this all means for Indiana without Rourke. Mm-hmm. If we kind of pull back to last season, not apples to apples, but Florida State, Jordan Travis, and the way that injury kind of changed their season. The difference is, I believe we all are expecting Rourke back at some point for Indiana.
More than likely next week, is that's been the reports. He had surgery to fix the issue, should be there for the road trip to Michigan State next weekend.
Which is perfect. If they lose this game and at Ohio State, which they're projected to lose, what does that mean for Indiana's hopes to make the college football playoff? If their losses are Ohio State on the road and the one game their starting quarterback didn't play, Joe, and they sit 10-2, is that good enough?
How do they lose these games? I think that's important as well. If they get blitzed by Washington today by double digits, 17, 20, it's going to be very difficult. They would need a monumental showing against Ohio State, lose it by 3. To be in the running.
You know, I disagree with the sentiment of the idea of perception of a football program, a multiple-loss Indiana team, depending on how the rest of the country stacks up to reach the college football playoff. I'm already going to be mad about it. I will rant about Indiana potentially being left out of the college football playoff, but that perception, whether fair or unfair, is not going to look great for the Hoosiers.
Sorry, but I swear I'm not doing a gotcha. But, If the basis for Clemson is we lost to Georgia, we cover every number. Well, Indiana didn't lose to anyone, and they cover every number.
For sure, yeah.
For Indiana, and again, not that it would matter here, right? But, why couldn't they be ranked 8th or 9th right now in the country where, you know what I'm saying? Indiana, why is it that Indiana is starting so far back right now compared to a Clemson?
Because of the preseason perception. 5.5 win total. Right? If they had an 8.5 win total, like Texas A&M and Mike Elko, things are different, right? You know, they're undefeated. They're over-exceeding up until this point.
For sure.
You know, and then the media perspective, because the media plays a huge part in the breakdown. But I'll throw not a curveball, but I'll give you a scenario. 10-2 Notre Dame, and I'll just throw it out, that loses to Navy and Northern Illinois, or Indiana, to your scenario, loses to Washington and Ohio State.
I think Indiana, personally.
I would hope it would be Indiana.
It's a great discussion.
It would be a great discussion, Joe. It would be a great discussion for one of those at-large bids.
Careful with the I hope it would be Indiana now. Notre Dame would still, though, finish the season with the win over A&M, which is one of the 5 best wins that any of the good teams have. And they would be likely still beating a ranked Army. The issue for Indiana, I think more than anything, is they got the fake Big Ten schedule.
Correct.
And that's kind of the thing. Because here's why I find Indiana so fascinating. And to me, this is a little bit more important than kind of the win or loss of it all today.
Well, it goes with it, right?
Yeah,
Can Washington keep this game close? What will Taven Jackson do against the Huskies to keep Indiana on track to earn a college football playoff berth?
Through the odds, Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State are in, and through just kind of common sense, that feels to be the case. Indiana is the 4th Big Ten team. Preseason, Joe, 4 Big Ten teams sounds like the floor.
Yeah.
We were, Michigan, USC.
Iowa.
The fact that, no, you're fair enough.
I'm being serious.
No, yeah. No,
they had an
you are.
They had an 8.5 win total. They were there. Eight win
I forget
total.
that they.
I mean, still to this point, IU is 14-1 to win the Big Ten. Oregon's plus 130. The Buckeyes are plus 165. Penn State is plus 350. There is still such a gap between the tier of 3 and IU, whether sound or not.
And let's put Illinois. They pick up the victory today.
100%. They
have one loss. They're in the mix as well. It's going to be a very important discussion as we enter the week number 14 and 15.
It is just fascinating that a Big Ten team is struggling so much to
get that perception.
full respect.
Yeah.
I think that's stunning.
And they should. They are one of 10 teams that has been booked as a favorite in every game. They are the only one to cover in at least 6 of their 7. More around college football. We go fast next.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst player speed I've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you guys do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players at home. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
It is time to go very fast around this Week 9 Saturday slate to end out October live right here on College Football Today. Kev, get it started.
All right, folks, what do we say? A little move it quick. RPO. We begin with a Colorado team that, quite frankly, I cannot figure out. That is because they keep mixing in good, well-rounded efforts, and that is not what they usually do. They're 3-1. I don't know. They're like kind of still live for the Big 12. Yeah. I mean, if Texas Tech is, Colorado has to be. They're a 6.5-point favorite, Joe, which a win, again, they're favored to win the game. Bowl eligibility, not a lot of people thought that was coming for Colorado this year.
No, not at all. I know Colorado seems like the pick here, but I actually like this Cincinnati team. They're a blue-collar team, pounded the rock last week for 191 yards on the ground, picked up the 24-14 victory over Arizona State. They've been covering numbers. They went to UCF, won the ball game outright, catching 6.5. I'm not discounting what Colorado and Dion have done, but I like Satterfield in Cincinnati here. Give me the Bearcats plus the points. I think they potentially can win it outright.
2 very intriguing teams, both with 2 losses this year, both 3-1 in Big 12 play. Colorado has been booked as a favorite 3 times this year. The North Dakota State game to start, twice against FBS foes. They have covered in all 2 of those games against FBS competition. Of course, 1 in overtime against Baylor. Just an underdog 7 times as compared to the 12 times, or favorite 7 times as compared to the 12 underdog games under Deion Sanders. 3-1 ATS, 9-3 against the number as a dog. They've covered in their last 3 as an underdog. Held Arizona to only 7 points a week ago. This Colorado defense is improved. Now, since he did allow 44 points to Texas Tech in its lone Big 12 loss this season, they've only allowed 27 total points in their 3 other Big 12 games. Cincy and Notre Dame 2 of 28 programs holding opponents to 20 points per game or less that allow more than 380 total yards. They bend, they do not break. I actually think we might stay under tonight in Boulder. I'm feeling a little bit dicey and a little bit spicy with that one.
Quick question here. RPO pit stop. We have more of these than you would think. Travis Hunter, 14-1 to win the Heisman. I truly cannot believe that number has not plummeted more. He's hardly played the last 2 weeks due to injury, Joe.
So you think it would be like, what, 30-1 right now? Or?
Like, I'm not trying to be fun. Like, 80, 90-1, I still wouldn't be betting him. I think he has no chance.
It's lost its steam, certainly. Can Colorado stay in the national conversation? They keep winning games.
And success, right?
Even if they do, he's missed 2 games. It's so hard.
Dual threat, though. That's
part of his appeal is doing everything and being out there all the time. When you take some of that away, it does become a little bit more difficult. Another intriguing one in the Big 12. It's an all-Texas showdown. TCU and Texas Tech. What happened to the Red Raiders last week as a 5-point favorite against Pitt? Oh, they lost by 24. 59-35. Oh, yeah. Texas Tech allowing more than 466 yards per game. That's second worst among power conference programs. Can they bounce back this week?
Yeah, they can. They can win the ball game outright. That was a pathetic performance.
It was.
Sawyer Robertson.
A couple of those this year.
Sawyer Robertson was absolutely phenomenal last week. They started fast. It was homecoming for Texas Tech.
5 passing touchdowns for Baylor's quarterback.
That defense, when Texas Tech loses, they lose.
Good point.
They're nowhere near, the spread from that perspective. But I will say this. They won this game last year by 8 points. Taj Brooks, I still think, can run on that front seven. I think Texas Tech, let's not forget, one conference loss. They're right there in the running. BYU has a difficult game today. Others as well within the conference. They're right there. They need to win. I like them to strike the upset.
I just really love, because I mean, listen, we all do a bit of needling, but he gets worse than I do when it comes to Texas Tech. Like, there is nothing.
Oh, yeah, of course.
No,
yeah.
He really runs it up on you. He really runs it up on you.
That's understandable. Yeah. But you know what? They're still in the running for the Big 12 championship, and I have that ticket. You don't. So when it
I think he's okay with that.
Yeah, he's okay.
No, I think he's okay.
Let's talk about Texas Tech as a 3-1 Big 12 team with a negative 7-point differential. They've won their 3 games. Tally-ho, Joey, by 17 total points. They got blown out by Baylor by 24. I would love to lay the number with TCU and Sonny Dykes today.
For your blood.
But they're 0-5 against the spread as a favorite this year, not covering by nearly 12 points per game. We just got an update, by the way, around Hugh Freeze, dealing with an illness, did not travel with Auburn yesterday to Lexington, but expected to show up today and be there on the sidelines in a crucial game for the Tigers. They are 0-4 straight up in the SEC. They are just 1-3 against the number. The only cover against Georgia in the Deep South's oldest rivalry, still lost that game by 3 scores. I had Auburn as a dog last week, got them at 4.5. They did cover that number against Missouri, did lose after leading 17-6 by 4 points. Kevin, am I crazy to back Auburn as a dog once again?
If you were getting 1.5, like, it seems like they'd probably
got 2.5 early in the week.
I don't really get this whole Auburn thing. I don't know. So it's interesting, right? But depending like which side you have. So I also covered last week, but I also bet Missouri last week, right? Laying 3.5. To me, I felt that they would have won by a whole lot more had Brady Cook not had to go to the hospital in the middle of the game, which is a nuts thing to say. To me, this isn't even about Auburn. This is about Mark Stoops stepping up. Listen, especially, I don't know, with maybe basketball around the horizon, like, Lexington is ready to leave this guy in the dust here, Joe. Kentucky has to step up in this spot at home at Pick. That's the way I look.
That's the way I look as well. Now, they allowed 48 points to Florida in that matchup. That total sailed through, by the way. It was in the area of about 46.5 against Florida last week. They put up 68 total points. But I'll take the flip side, Kev. You said it's not about Auburn. I believe it is about Auburn because they have lost 4 straight. They have no identity right now. Their coach is dead man walking as well.
He's dealing with an illness.
I don't mean like that. It was food poisoning. What I mean by that, we've seen Brian Harsin, run out of town in regards to that situation. Hugh Freeze is on thin ice here. He needs to pick up a conference win. They've covered against Georgia. They covered against Missouri. They played well in some other games, but couldn't pull them out at home. I'll take Kentucky. Again, Kentucky to me at home is the difference. Have no confidence in a team that's reeling right now and can't run the football consistently. They haven't been over 170 yards over the last 4 weeks. Give me Kentucky. I think they might beat them up today.
How hot is the Stoops seat if they lose here? Third straight.
Not really.
No?
I don't think. Stoops is there for a while. Sign the
is
extension instead of going to
I
A&M.
think Freeze is hotter.
Freeze might be hotter.
Oh, I agree.
Kentucky's the worst scoring offense in the SEC, the only one averaging less than 22 points per game, just 20.4. Haven't run it well.
Yep.
Not great. Brock Vandegrift, 165 yards passing or less in 4 or 5 SEC games. Very short spread in Lexington. Kentucky's lost outright in its 3 games booked as a favorite. We'll continue to talk about that one a little bit later on. Northwestern and Iowa inside Kinnick Stadium today. The Hawkeyes 2-2, both straight up and against the spread in Big Ten play. Northwestern with David Braun has been a great underdog and a great double-digit underdog. Kev, now the Hawks laying more than 2 touchdowns. How do you judge that spread?
The more I stare at it, this has got to be under, right? I mean, they just gave up 32 points. I know all they do is cash overs. Maybe this is a return to greatness, win with the defense only, win this game 17-3.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll take 17-3, but I'm liking Northwestern more and more. I mean, I was on Michigan State last week, 6.5. The one thing I don't like right now is Iowa allowed 212 yards on the ground to Sparty, right? That's the way Northwestern has to win this game. They're still a one-dimensional offense, blue-collar type of theme, methodical, well under 185 passing yards per game. I'll take Northwestern. Iowa has won 3 straight in the series, but I think the Wildcats are alive in Iowa City.
Iowa allowed 468 yards to Michigan State, more than 400 against Ohio State 2 weeks prior to that. They had 32 consecutive games allowing 400 yards or less. Quickly here, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, 10.5-point spread in favor of the Hokies, showing some bounce back. Minnesota and Maryland, 5.5-point number in favor of the Gophers. Give me a quick bet on each.
I like Tootin for Tech, and I'll take PJ. I'll roll that boat.
Maryland, Minnesota, my notes were who put this in the show.
You did. Gophers really good at Big Ten play. More on college football today next.
Did they talk about the play at the end of the game when it was the worst player screen I've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run, where I may play 4 players hit home run. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on College Football Today, we get you set for the final Saturday in October here on SportsGrid. It's Joe Lisi, it's Ben Stevens, and it's the insight of Coach Terry Bowden. 28 years as a head coach in the collegiate ranks. He gets you ready for week number 9 of this college football campaign. Coach, as always, we appreciate the time. How much are you looking forward to this final Saturday in October?
Oh, I couldn't be happier here on the Bayou in Monroe, Louisiana. I couldn't be happier. It's a Saturday. Can't sleep. It's football day, and that's my history. I always get up for football on Saturday.
Probably started his Saturday with some grits. That would be my expectation, as we discussed a week ago. And Coach Bowden, you know how big this game is on the Bayou tonight, at least for those that back the purple and gold. Game in College Station at Kyle Field. Top 15 tilt between 14th-ranked Texas A&M and 8th-ranked LSU. The Aggies, a very slight home favorite tonight, Coach, at Kyle Field. Just how close of a game is this going to be?
Well, it's going to be close. I'm going LSU. I'm straight up. I'm going with LSU. In fact, I'm going with them to cover, too. But they both have great interior linemen, offensively and defensively, and I think that's going to balance out in the running game. They both can run pretty well, but I think it's going to get down to now who can pass the football, who's got the best quarterback, who's got the best pass protection. Nussmeier, that offensive line at LSU with those two left tackle, right tackle, that's going to be the strength. That's why they're going to win it. Turns to the passing game, Nussmeier's going to win it. And I think LSU comes out of there with a victory.
Coach, to your point, LSU's offensive line hasn't allowed a sack all year long, so that'll be the matchup going up against the front seven. In regards to the crowd noise, there's going to be 110,000 fans. What can LSU do to get an edge from the crowd perspective? What would you suggest as well from the coaching perspective?
Joe, they don't have to prepare. They play for that every home game, but louder. So it's not always as loud when they're on the ball, but they're used to hearing it. They're used to being a part of it. Of all the teams that are not necessarily intimidated going into Cal Field, it's LSU because they play in Death Valley, the loudest place in the country.
Yeah, that is for sure a night game, not intimidating for the Bayou Bengals, but should be an electric atmosphere tonight in College Station. They haven't allowed the sack, LSU. They also have 24 sacks. This defense under Blake Baker, much improved in the last few weeks. Coach Bowden, another top 25 tilt on this significant Saturday in the SEC. 15th-ranked Alabama suffering its second loss of the year last week against Tennessee, and a Missouri team, only one loss, but without key contributors offensively. No Brady Cook, their starting quarterback. No Nate Noel, who has run for more than 500 yards this year for Mizzou. Coach, from the coaching perspective, Kalen DeBoer trying to get this Alabama team back on track in his first year in Tuscaloosa. How does he do that today against Mizzou?
Well, it's not today. It's throughout that week. Alabama's number one enemy is themselves. They're undisciplined. They're 126th in penalties. They had 15 for 115 yards against in their last ball game, and that's why they couldn't come back and win the game, because they had penalties on 4th and 7 that went to 4th and 22. They've got to be more disciplined and then not turn the ball over with Milroe. Now, I think they got their attention. I know a lot of people in Alabama, they have been on Alabama all week, and it ain't sounded good. I think that attention was got. Then Cook and Noel missing, it changes everything for Missouri. So not only am I taking Alabama to correct there, because that's very correctable, those kind of mistakes, penalties and turnovers are correctable. I think not only does Alabama win, but I think that they cover.
Coach, let's look at the Missouri side, right? You mentioned they're shorthanded. What could they do? They're playing a little bit with house money as well, right? Nobody's expecting them to win this matchup. Maybe more pressure on Alabama. So do you think Drinkwitz and Missouri favor a lower scoring game, or do they pull out all the stops, maybe with some trick plays in this matchup?
I think they think about a lower scoring game. When you're trying to beat somebody that lines up with better personnel, you've got to slow the game down. You've got to have drives. You've got to run the clock, try to go as slow as you can, take as much time off on each play, and keep the game close into the second half. Because remember, Alabama, not only are they undisciplined, but they probably lost some confidence in the way in which they've lost games. So the key is get them into the second half close, and all of a sudden Alabama begins to worry, and the confidence of Missouri begins to increase.
Mizzou, a top 10 scoring defense in the country right now, but a lot of that is bolstered by the non-power conference competition. In those 3 games, The Tigers have only allowed 3 total points. Alabama hoping to avoid its 3rd SEC loss in a season for the first time since 2010. Coach, we've got 5 ranked versus ranked top 25 tilts on this final Saturday in October, including the 97th all-time meeting between Notre Dame and Navy, the midshipman number 24 in the country, the Irish number 12 in the nation. A matchup inside MetLife Stadium today. Coach Bowden, as you break down this game, what is that key matchup?
Oh, the key matchup is talent versus scheme. Can Notre Dame have great assignment football and know who to pick up? I mean, unbelievable offense. If you've watched the highlights like I have this weekend, Navy will get talented people to run the wrong way and not have to block them one-on-one. That's their key. But Notre Dame is going to get penetration in the backfield, going to mess up too many plays. Notre Dame's just too talented. I'm going to stick with Notre Dame to cover because they're so talented, and Navy has not played a Power 4 team all year.
Coach, let's look at the Notre Dame offense as well. You look at Riley Leonard. We talked about it all week. He's starting to come on in regards to the passing attack. Do you think Notre Dame attacks Navy over the top with the passing game because of Leonard's success, or do they look to run it and pound and wear down a smaller defensive front?
You know, either way, because, one, they're going to be physically more talented, and they're going to be able to beat one-on-one blocks and win all those and run the football. But you're talking about a team that never gets to practice a sophisticated passing attack. They're playing their offensive style. They do throw for a lot of yardage, but it's all play action, misdirection, hit wide open people. Notre Dame has so much skill in the passing game and so much power. They'll mix it up to score more points because at times you've got to outscore a team like Navy.
And Navy is the 4th best scoring offense in the country this year, averaging nearly 45 points per game. There's only one FBS program, guys, that has gone over in every single game this season. It's the Naval Academy by an average of more than 16 points per game. Coach Terry Bowden, we appreciate the insight and the analysis each and every Saturday. Enjoy this final one in October.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank you for being here. We give you some Pater picks and some plus money as we find that money line underdog that goes barking on this final weekend of October as college football today on SportsGrid continues next on the other side of the break.
Did they talk about the play they ran at the end of the game when it was the worst flare screen I've ever seen in the history of basketball? No. See, here's what you got to do, Sherwood. I respect you. You're fantastic. But damn it, don't blame the officials. When you have a game like that close, there's about 100 or 1,000 different things you could have done differently that could have won you the game.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I tend to do this a lot, by the way. I do it more in baseball with the anytime home run where I may play 4 players hit home run. I call it covering the board. You know, if I take 4 players, bet the same amount on each, I only need to hit 2 of them and I win money.
He's already got, 438 rushing yards on the season. He's looking like the old LT days where the Chargers were able to have that strong, dominant running back.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They lost in Neyland to Tennessee, 24-17. Again, and look, that puts Alabama in a very tough spot. I was looking at the SEC standings just before. They've got 2 losses now in conference because they lost that Vandy game.
They're still one of the top-ranked teams in the country when they lose. Everyone else drops like a brick when they lose, except for Alabama.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here, rounding out our second hour on this final Saturday of October. It's college football today on SportsGrid. Before we find those guys that will get into the end zone and across the pylon, and, of course, a moneyline underdog or some other buffoonery to give you some big plus money plays, a big breaking news update from ESPN's Pete Thamel. We had talked about it with Coach Bowden that Brady Cook not expected to play today for Missouri, dealing with an ankle injury. He was doubtful for most of the week, has not taken reps at practice. It was going to be Drew Pine. That update is that Brady Cook might be a game-time decision by the time we get to this Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa.
Pretty interesting, Joe. It certainly changes the perception. I've noticed that number's been trickling down. If I know you'd rather Pine play and get a bigger number. But if all of a sudden we do see Brady Cook get the start, how low does this go? 12.5?
12, probably. I'd say 13. 13. It would stay on the opening line and Sunday night. It popped up 13 and a halves across the board, and then ballooned once Noel and Cook were doubtful on the injury report. But again, this affects the total now too, right? Because
down by a point. Interestingly enough.
Sell it. Kid can't move.
Well, that's the thing, too. I hope this isn't one where, they're going to put him under center to just throw, like, short throws, and then, the injury report is a detriment at this point.
Down by double digits, Brady Cook went to a nearby hospital in Columbia last week to get an MRI on that injured ankle against Auburn. Did lead the comeback in the third quarter and late in the fourth quarter. All right, now let's get those plays across the pylon.
Come on now, little pay dirt picks. All right, I might have to go to the bullpen here. You're going to have to help me out, all right? Because I'm on Kentucky's Jamarian Wilcox.
Okay.
Because the starting back for Kentucky is injured. I like the Wildcats in the game. Can you think you could...
Demi Sumo Kongbe.
Come on now. As I was saying, Demi Sumo. Listen, he's been solid for Kentucky here, but with him out, Wilcox looks like he'll step in, be the primary back. Minus 115 on a college kid to score is a great number. Consider Jeremiah Smith. I'll mention him in a little bit, though.
Yeah, I'm going to turn my attention to Fort Worth, TCU, and Texas Tech. Coy Eakin, last two games, only 32 receiving yards, no touchdowns. He does have 5 on the season. He's plus 160 to hit pay dirt today. It was Douglas last week in the second half. Look for Eakin to step up. I like the number.
I go Justice Ellison for Indiana. No Curtis Work. They're going to trust their two backs in Tyson Lawton and Justice Ellison. I stayed off his number last week because the Huskers had not allowed a single rushing touchdown all year. Indiana scored 5. Ellison had multiple. He has scored 8 rushing touchdowns. He has scored in every game since the opener against FIU. Minus 145. Our guy, Chris Kofsky, our executive producer, going back to an SEC wide receiver. If Nicky Treats could throw a better deep ball, Squirrel White would have found the end zone last week. Now he looks to Kyron Lacey, who has been big in SEC play, despite Nussmeier throwing for less than 285 for the first time this year last week against Arkansas. We would expect a better passing attack this week against A&M. So those are the pay dirt picks. Now, big plus money.
How about a little go for the loot? Open that vault up. All right, listen, I know I'm breaking all the rules, but I should have won last week. This kid Avery Johnson throws for 3 bills, and I can't get 500+. Garrett Green, you should be ashamed of yourself. B-Ruts, I blame you. I don't care. I'm going to the specials again. This is a sizzle. Plus 300. Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith, Kinshawn Judkins, 4+ touchdowns combined. They've done it twice this year, Joe. I know you like Nebraska, but still, the Buckeyes are supposed to score a ton, and I think these are your key guys.
If Indiana puts up 56, there's the potential for Ohio State to duplicate that, so I like to look at 3-1. I went Big Ten as well, but I'm taking Northwestern plus 500 on the money line. I'm not sold on Iowa. And think about this, Northwestern 3-4. This is where for these teams you start thinking bowl eligibility and bowl contention. They're going to be in the game, and it's a rivalry game. Lost 10-7 last year. Give me Northwestern outright.
The Cats have been a double-digit dog in every single Big Ten game this year, all 4. Just 1-3, both straight up and against the spread. beating Maryland outright as a double-digit dog. David Braun has led Northwestern to 4 outright wins as a double-digit underdog since he took over at Evanston. It's the most in the country in that span. Give me North Texas. One of them last week against Memphis stayed off. They covered the number as a double-digit underdog against the Tigers. This week, I think they pull off the outright upset against Tulane. Huge one in the American. Chandler Morris is throwing that thing. Third best total offense in the country. Everybody, threes up in the air. We get to our third and final hour. Thank you for doing that here on College Football Today. Next.